Okay, so this one is about the shadow nature of gifting. And you might think, well, there's a dark nature to gifting. And it's not dark in terms of, well, it's not dark at all. It's just the shadow aspect of gifting, and the consequences of gifting when they're not done in a truly thoughtful manner, and when we feign appreciation. So I'll just rip the Band-Aid off it and just share with you that gifting, the gifting of presents to people when they haven't asked, can be extremely detrimental. And in fact, it's a huge issue. Because if we gift someone something and they're like, oh yeah, hey, thanks, yeah, awesome, and they don't appreciate it, then it's just creating clutter. And when I say appreciation, I mean, just a reminder that appreciation is not gratitude. You can be grateful that someone thought of you, but to appreciate something means that it will be imbued with your presence. So you'll spend time with it, utilizing it, looking at it, holding it, cooking with it, creating with it, whatever it may be. That's appreciation. And, the only mechanism to appreciate something in the world is your presence. And that means that you're there physically with something and you're present and observing it. And so you're imbuing it with your energy, or you are utilizing money to appreciate it. And money really is just latent appreciation. And once it's been gifted to someone, money's been gifted to someone, it's a mechanism for appreciating them. So, if you've got money and it's sitting in the bank, it appreciates. That's the best way to think of it. So your gratitude for something, being grateful for receiving something, and then chucking it in the closet and never using it again, that's a worthless gift other than the gesture of the person. So, but the reality is, if they've gifted you something, and you chuck it in the cupboard and never use it, they haven't really thought about it. If they knew you, or if they, understood you, and that's the real key, is understanding each other. If they understood you, they'd know that, that they would make an effort to identify an unmet need that you have, and then they would meet that need, and therefore you would appreciate that gift. And so when I talk about the shadow nature of gifting, this is what I mean. Gifts that are not meeting an unmet need and are therefore just creating rubbish dumps in people's homes, cluttering up their garages, cluttering up their cupboards, cluttering up storage units, and then they start paying for all the presents they've received. And, if I'm honest, most of the presents that people storing in storage units, I would say, are probably from people that they love. And, they're sentimentally holding on to these presents because they feel like they're rejecting that person's love if they were to, hand that present on, or, give it away to someone who would appreciate it. And so, that being said, even when you give things away to people, so here's a classic scenario. Someone's gifted you something, a present for Christmas, and you're like, oh yeah, nah, yeah, thanks. But really you're like, nah, that's not I'm not keen on that. So you think to yourself, okay, I'm going to re-gift that. The bread maker is the classic one in New Zealand. That was a classic gift for ages. And, it seems like a really cool present to give someone, but it's like, oh, yeah, nah, how often am I going to use that? But, so you get the bread maker, oh, thanks. And then you're going to re-gift it to someone, and you think, oh yeah, I'll give it to so-and-so, they'll appreciate it. And then you give it to them, And they're like, oh, yeah, a bread maker, thanks. And then they chuck it in the cupboard and then they plan to regift it. And so regifting does not solve the problem. The issue is that we don't understand each other enough. We don't understand each other. We haven't uncovered an unmet need, and we're not providing gifts that are meeting that need. So this is the other reason why, we have to evolve into an asking economy where we're asking for what we want. And this is the mechanism of a pledge, where we're going to someone and saying, listen, this is something I'd really appreciate. My capacity to appreciate that now is a donation of $100. And, we can choose to receive that, or we can say, we can reject it. We can refuse. And you can check out other podcast episodes where I've talked about refusing, the nature of refusing. You can refuse a gift. You absolutely can refuse a gift. And now if someone gives you something and you're not going to appreciate it, but they're going to be offended, when you refuse it, it basically means repurposing. So if you the intention is you receive a gift, that you're not going to appreciate it, you don't want to hurt the person's feelings, but you want to make sure it goes to someone that does appreciate it. So you've got two options. So at one level, that gift is, it's just matter. It's just atoms and molecules that have come from the earth. And so to repurpose that is to refuse it and send it to the refuse. Now, of course, the way we manage refuse at the moment means that that's not ideal. But there are solutions that are not far off at all. Because what the earth is actually doing, the moment it is expressing or birthing something into existence, in the form of atoms, molecules, solid matter out of the earth in any kind of form, whether it's a mineral or a plant or whatever it may be. The moment it's birthed, it's in the process of being refused, coming back into the center of the earth. Eventually it'll decompose, come back in, where it will be refused. And deep within the earth, there is plasma that gets so hot that it literally melts everything back into its pure state of plasma. Plasma meaning it's like if you imagine in your blood, you have plasma in your blood, and from within your blood, all the blood cells arise, and it's similar to the plasma in the earth. Everything arises out of the plasma. It's like the source of everything that will take on material form through the earth. So, once we get good at that, and we understand that, the ideal mechanism for dealing with refuse is to dispose of it into the center of the earth as far as we can go, so that it actually refuses with no negative impact, because it's so hot that everything just melts into its original form, into its primordial state. So once we get there, we're never going to have an issue with refusing stuff. Refusing a gift. Oh, thanks for the bread maker. Down to the center of the earth to be refused, because once we get that sorted, we can let nature meet the unmet need, because all of nature is evolving to meet an unmet need of something that exists now. So when the earth is birthing something new, that's actually being birthed to meet an unmet need of some form of life. And that's what evolution is, and that's why everything's symbiotic, because, when there's an unmet need over here of some evolving form of life, some new form of life evolves, to meet that need in a symbiotic way. It may become its food, but nonetheless, this is how it works. So, someone gives you a bread maker, rather than re-gifting it to someone who won't appreciate it as well, you can send it to be refused, and it'll be birthed into nature again in a form that is meeting an unmet need and will therefore be appreciated. So in terms of the earth becoming, lean and mean, where there will always be wastage, but once we have this mechanism for refusing matter in an extraordinarily efficient form with no loss, it's everything is utilized when it's fused back into its original state. We're extraordinarily lean, and we're not gonna keep clutter around the place, because we know that our capacity to create something new is always going to be there. And, we can come close to, when we get very, very good at this, imagine all of the energy that if we took all of the garbage from around the world, and then disposed of it in this way, imagine all of the energy that can then be utilized, creating new minerals and all these kinds of things through the earth, through this process, and coming up into the soil. And so, there's massive benefits of refusion, but, that I will do a podcast episode on that at some point. But what I really want to hone in on is the shadow aspect of gifting, and that if you are giving something to someone and it's a gift and they don't appreciate it, if it's not meeting an unmet need, then you're actually not helping in any way, shape or form. It's not, it's wasted energy. It's wasted energy, and it's just sitting there. Nothing is appreciated. No one's presence is appreciating it. There's no utility or utilization. And this mindset of, I'll just keep it just in case, I'll just hang on to it just in case I need it one day. It's like, well, that's, that matter, that energy, because it is energy. Everything that is sitting in a cupboard is latent potential. It's energy that's unutilized. It's like, it's like a body storing fat almost. It's like the earth. It's the equivalent of the earth storing fat, and the earth has to metabolize that energy if it's not being utilized. So, if you got two sets of golf clubs, allow the earth to metabolize one of those and turn it into something useful. So, when we talk about the depletion of the earth's resources, once we understand the nature of refusion, and we realize that, everything that is not being appreciated now and utilized now is just fat on the body of the earth that could be metabolized into, a source of energy to create something that will meet an unmet need, because nature's far more intelligent than we are. So, nature doesn't create bread makers, people do. So, I know that'll make sense, but, it is important to understand this, because we think that, I'll give someone a gift. It's a good thing to do. Often it isn't. And I'd say more often than not, it isn't, because we don't know that we're meeting an unmet need. We're just trying to be seen as someone who's gifting. And there's a classic story in my family. When I was, a teenager, or maybe not even a teenager, maybe in my 20s, one Christmas, or it might have been a birthday, I bought my sister a samurai sword. I bought her a samurai sword, and it was so obvious that I just put no effort into thinking about it. And I, at some level, I was thinking, man, she's going to be like, real stoked that I got her something so unique and weird. And when she opened it, I knew immediately, and it hit me. I was like, I made zero effort to think about my sister. I made zero effort to understand was something she might need, and try and meet that need. And really, when we receive a gift, the sense of love that we experience when we receive a gift is when that gift is showing us that person understands us. It's all about understanding, and understanding someone is the deepest form of love you can express, really. So, lots of people utilize gifting as a love language, but it's because they understand that, it's a safe way for them to demonstrate to another person how deeply they're understood. And that's a very touching experience for any human being. So yeah, no samurai swords and no bread makers. And so if anything, my hope is that it's just a quick podcast episode, because I'm doing a declutter at the moment, and going through this exact process. And if you want a hint to get started, the ideal thing to ask yourself is, do I have the capacity to appreciate this now? Meaning, will this item receive my presence now? In my daily life, me going through my daily life, will this item receive my presence at all? And if the answer is no, then refuse it. Send it to the refuse, or in New Zealand, a really easy way to make sure something that you want to refuse, or something that you want to re-gift, but make sure someone appreciates it, is just put it on a $1 reserve auction on Trade Me. And, at least that way you'll guarantee it sells, and you'll guarantee that the person who buys it is someone that is going to appreciate it straight away. So, I find that really easy. Just dollar auction, dollar auction, dollar auction. And sometimes you're surprised at how much people, appreciate things that you're, well and truly over. Or, but sometimes it doesn't work that way as well. You think something's more valuable, and it's not. But this is exactly why the nature of this is exactly why we need an economy based on asking, rather than, creating things and trying to meet an unmet need and setting the price at exactly the same level. The value of this is $1,000. It's worth $1,000 to you and you and you and you. But the reality is that, the capacity of someone to appreciate something is always a factor. And so to you, it's worth 800, to you, it's worth 50, to you, it's worth 750. And this is the beauty of pledging, is that it gives everyone the opportunity to meet an unmet need. And it gives people the opportunity to use their gifts in a way that ensures that they're appreciated. And, if you've got the means to appreciate someone more than what they would have valued the item, then they're free to do that. And if someone isn't, but they still have some capacity to appreciate that item, then, they can access it, and they can meet an unmet need as well. But yeah, it's the key to this is make sure you're meeting an unmet need every time you're gifting. Otherwise, you're just cluttering up the world, and it's a waste of energy that could be metabolized by the earth and turned into some other form of energy. And I might as well drop the breadcrumb here now. I've got a theory that if we do become lean, in terms of if we can come together as a society and establish, a gifting-based economy where, that enables us to meet the unmet needs of people, and also to be able to refuse forms of matter that have transcended their ability to be appreciated by people. They've become obsolete or whatever it may be, and that it's just a no-brainer to refuse these things. I have a theory that we can, that we can generate clean forms of energy through this mechanism if we become efficient at this. And my hope is that through the gifting-based economy, we begin to see signs of these things, that they may be possible. And of course, it's going to take time, and it'll take some time for people to wrap their heads around this concept, of a purely trust-based economy where your reputation is the thing that really holds it all together. And ultimately trust is really what it's formed around. But when you think about it, the current economy is built on trust anyway, with the banks being the mechanism that imbues trust into the system. And I think once we just get a few things off the ground, a few projects off the ground, and start to see them working, and reconcile any issues that pop up, and I think it will really evolve. And I'm very excited about this phase we're moving into now. And hopefully you got some inspiration from this podcast. So I'll leave it there. That's it for now for the shadow nature of gifting. Cheers for now.